For a lot of the more serious people who want to compete in combat sports, be it MMA, BJJ, boxing, kickboxing, or Muay Thai, the problem is not staying disciplined. The problem is not staying consistent. The problem isn't even having or lacking the proper drive or lacking the proper will to win. So a lot of people have dialed in their lifestyle. They are disciplined, they are consistent, they have proper motivation and proper drive. But if you are lacking proper training methodologies, or you're not training at a good gym, or your coach isn't good, then all of those things don't really matter all that much. Well, they matter a lot, but they are not going to bring you to a high level or even an elite level. It is entirely possible to spend hundreds, if not thousands of hours at the gym in drilling combinations, drilling moves, drilling guard passes, drilling submissions, drilling different sequences, you name it. And after all that, you could still lose to somebody who spends less time doing all of these things. The reason behind this goes all the way back to feedback loops. So, what are feedback loops? A feedback loop is any system that takes your performance and tells you immediately whether or not you're doing something correctly or not. And it gives adjustments and tips for improving your execution, leading to an increase in skill over time. So, think about it like this: you could shoot a basketball over and over again and not make any improvements and not make any adjustment. Or you can shoot a basketball, you can see whether it goes in or not, and then you can make an adjustment based on whether or not it goes in. After this, you can try and shoot again and then repeat the loop. So it is the adjusting stage that most gyms are lacking. This right here is key. So for martial arts, a lot of people will spar randomly. A lot of people will randomly drill techniques or randomly roll, and they will make absolutely no adjustment. So you can do this, or you can spar or practice, and then afterwards you can look for flaws in your technique or in whatever you're doing and track the metrics. And then you can analyze mistakes and figure out how to correct these mistakes. So, this is one of the key things that a lot of gyms are lacking. In most gyms, training is isolated, repetitive, and unmonitored. Hitting the pads is good, but it is not the equivalent to actually fighting. It doesn't simulate real resistance. And the same thing applies for drilling takedowns. Drilling takedowns against a compliant partner is good, but it doesn't really simulate a partner that isn't compliant or is fully resisting. So if you spar and you don't track the mistakes that you're making, or you don't track metrics, then that could lead to these same mistakes being repeated over and over again. And you could repeat these same mistakes for months, if not years, and still have the same outcome and still be repeating the same mistakes and not even realizing it. So without feedback or without data, you're just left guessing for what you're doing wrong, when this entire process can be streamlined with feedback and with data rather than banging your head against the wall for years and years wondering what you're doing wrong. In my previous videos, what I did was I went to UFC Stats and I web scraped the entire website of 8,533 fights. And I tracked metrics. I tracked each of those metrics and determined which ones determine the difference between winning and losing the most. So, which metrics best predict winning? And then afterwards, what I did was I went and translated these metrics into actual skills that you can learn. So, let's imagine this: you have fighter A, which is a dumb fighter, as you can see here, and he throws one combo 100 times in practice. He throws one combo, he practices one submission, he practices one sequence, whatever, you name it. So fighter A doesn't adjust whatsoever. And then you have fighter B, who is the intelligent fighter, who throws one combo 50 times in practice and he adjusts, or this can be anything, right? Any sequences. and he adjusts based on whether or not each strike landed or created an opening. So, who improves quicker? Obviously, fighter B, because it's fighter B who is actually making adjustments and getting feedback and improving each time that he is throwing a combo or doing a sequence or practicing a skill. It is fighter B that is improving at a higher level. So, volume alone is not what we need, all right? Volume alone is not what determines skill. It is feedback loops and deliberate practice that lead to skill acceleration. And it is surprising how many gyms actually lack this key thing. So, feedback loops mog volume. Remember that always. Now, when it comes to the sort of feedback that you want to get, there are several types of feedback. So, first, there's qualitative feedback. So, this could be a partner looking at what you're doing or a coach observing what you're doing and then telling you how to correct what you're doing or giving you tips on what to correct. So, these are not really exact measurements, these are just things that they're observing and then telling you how to correct these things. And then you have quantitative feedback. Quantitative feedback are basically numbers in statistics. So this can be statistics like strike accuracy, takedown success, and control times. In this case, you are tracking how many times something happens. And this is very important because this will give you an idea of how much you are improving or not improving exactly. This gives an exact measurement for improvement. And then you have self feedback. All right. And this one is more tricky because a lot of the times you do have blind spots when you're only relying on self feedback. So when you are doing self feedback, you're asking yourself what worked and what didn't and why. So think about it. Maybe you're sparring and you're thinking, am I hitting the openings that I created or am I just swinging blindly? So this requires a lot of reflection. Now, a lot of you, unfortunately, may have to rely on this, but this is more or less the least reliable method of feedback. And also, if you're a beginner or if you're not at an advanced level, you may not even know what you don't know. You may not even know what you have to work on. So, why is it that many gyms lack proper feedback loops? In a lot of cases, and I think that the main reason for this is that coaches don't care or they're inattentive. In a lot of cases, there will be coaches that make you do drills and they won't really give you feedback because they don't care enough or they're too focused on their high level fighters or their competitors to properly teach the fundamentals to beginners and give feedback. All right. Now, in a lot of cases, this may not necessarily be the coach's fault because in a lot of gyms, there are 20 people and then there's one coach. So there isn't really that much room for the coach to be paying attention to everybody. However, in the vast majority of gyms that I've been to, this is actually the case. I have I've been to gyms where the coach will just make you do drills and they won't really give you tips to improve. They won't really point out your flaws. They'll just make you do drills and oftentimes it's random drills and then they'll just make you spar and you're not really learning anything. And I realized this when I went to a good gym with a good coach and then the man told me that I didn't even know how to throw a jab properly. There was so many things that I was doing incorrectly and there were so many blind spots that I didn't even realize that I had because my coaching was improper. And this is a more rare issue, but maybe coaches are not knowledgeable enough even to spot out the flaws or weaknesses in your game or the areas of improvement. So, in a lot of gyms, the culture emphasizes volume over quality. In a lot of cases, coaches or fighters will just tell you, "Oh, well, just train more, bro. Just grind more reps, bro. Just drill more, bro." And they'll do this without analysis, leading to muscle memory for mistakes. They won't analyze or correct any of your flaws, and then you will have very strong muscle memory for things that will make you lose fights rather than correcting technique. In some cases, there may be pressure to perform in classes or camps. So fighters may be more focused on keeping up with teammates or showing effort rather than actually learning and correcting mistakes. So I've talked about this before. There are limited self-analysis tools. Most gyms, in a lot of gyms, especially boxing gyms, they discourage recording. All right, they don't really like to do video reviews. A lot of gyms, well, the vast majority of gyms, except if you're at the Performance Institute, they won't really track metrics or data or any of that, which I think would be very useful if the vast majority of gyms applied this. A lot of gyms don't even do structured sparring. They'll just have you do, or they won't give you structured sparring feedback. They'll just have you spar randomly and they won't really analyze this. So fighters don't see patterns in their wins or their losses. They're just drilling, throwing stuff at the wall, and hoping that they get better. And at first, I suffered with this problem a lot. I feel like every beginner suffers from a fear of criticism, right? Because you're in a new environment and it might be intimidating. Some athletes may be reluctant to ask questions or admit mistakes, and maybe coaches may not encourage honest feedback. So, how can we fix this issue when it comes to mixed martial arts training or martial arts training as a whole? So, there's a realistic scenario, and this is something that the vast majority of you can apply. And then there's an optimal scenario, which would be if you had optimal resources or you had unlimited resources, then here is what I would do. So, now we're going to go over the optimal scenario first. So, step one for the optimal scenario is to spar or drill or practice, right? Because I'm not even sure that drilling is the best way for skill development. So, you do this and then you track metrics. So, in the best case scenario, there would be somebody like a coach to watch fighters spar and to give feedback between rounds, which is done in most gyms. However, what isn't done in most gyms is that they film the sparring and then they track metrics. All right. So this is not done in the vast majority of gyms. Right. So what exactly is it that we're tracking? We're tracking significant strikes and the area where they're landed, the significant strikes absorbed, and the area for which you're absorbing the takedowns landed, takedowns attempted, along with the takedown type, along with the control time. So how much you're on top. So after this, we are going to study the film to uncover flaws. So when we're studying film, here's is what we're looking for. We're looking for areas where you're losing exchanges. So either you're in the pocket and you're getting outstruck, or you're getting taken down, or you're getting reversed. So maybe you've taken somebody down and they're able to sweep you, or they're able to reverse the position, or you're getting taken down against the cage. All right, I'm not sure why I put fence here. You're also looking for areas where you're being hit clean. So, areas where you're being hit clean without blocking, slipping, or rolling, or you're getting hit while striking, so in between your strikes or at the end of your own strike, or you're getting hit while trying to exit an exchange, or once again, you're getting hit in a pocket exchange still. And then you have moments where your offense should have worked but didn't, right? So maybe you throw a feint, your opponent reacts, but you don't actually capitalize on that opportunity. Or you enter in on a takedown and you get stuff. Or you may land a jab, all right? So you may land one strike, but then you hesitate to follow up. So you're looking for this as well. And the most important thing here, in my opinion, is repeated patterns, all right? So if you make a mistake once, fair enough. But if you repeat a mistake over and over again, then that is a skill deficiency. So maybe you're getting hit clean by the same counter multiple times, or getting hit clean by the same combination multiple times, or the same sequence multiple times and not adjusting. Or you're doing the same takedown over and over again and failing repeatedly. Or you're losing the same position in every round. So a rule is that if it happens three or more times, it is a skill deficiency, right? A skill issue, not bad luck. And you're looking for decision making errors as well. So ask, where are you attacking? So along with this, you could be making decision making errors as well. All right. So you're asking, are you attacking where nothing was open? Are you too passive when there's openings? Do you force exchanges instead of properly setting them up? So common signs of this are swinging after missing badly, or shooting for takedowns when you're too far out, or just entering exchanges, or shooting for takedowns with zero setup. And this decision making bit maps directly onto fight IQ. Also, a key thing, I think that distance in combat sports is everything. All right. So, distance management is a huge issue for a lot of people, even myself. Right. So, you could be looking at your exchanges and asking, are you too close or are you too far? Are you too far for takedowns? Are you squared up when you should be bladed? Are you backing up in straight lines? If you are having a issue with your distance management, then this could be the direct cause of absorbing more strikes or having your takedowns stuffed. And this is more so related to footwork. Now, for every error that you are going to make, it falls into one or more of five categories. So either it is a decision error, or it is a timing error, so you do the right thing but at the wrong moment, or it is a distance error, so you're either out of range or you are too close, or it's a mechanical error, so an issue with your form basically. You're not doing a technique correctly, or it could even be a sequencing error. So there's no setup, or you set everything up properly, but there's no follow up. So for every mistake that you are making, you should be able to describe it in one sentence and then categorize it into one of the categories that I named previously. And then after you do this, you prescribe the right corrective exercise or the correct corrective drill according to the error type. So let's say that you're having a mechanical error. So maybe you're not turning your punches over fully, or maybe your form is off, or maybe you're diving instead of doing a proper level change and shooting for a takedown, or maybe you're turning over too much when you're throwing hooks, whatever it is. You can do an isolated drill, all right? So, what you're doing, so examples of this could be shadow boxing with constraints or doing slow reps. So, say for example, that when you throw a jab, your rear hand always drops. You do jab only rounds with your hand glued to your face. Or you could even tie some hand wraps to your face. You do it in old school. So, next thing you have are timing errors. You have timing errors. And in order to correct timing errors, you would do drills where your partner isn't fully resisting or fully trying to confuse you, right? So maybe in terms of striking, you can do something where your partner is reacting, right, to your strikes and your setups, but they're not doing it fully. So if you're suffering from a decision error or a fight IQ error, then you would most benefit from constraint-based sparring, which is something that I'm going to go over in future videos. But examples of this would be it's literally just sparring, but you're given constraints. So you're only allowed to strike after an opponent steps in, or only allowed to shoot after a feint. So with a distance error, right, you have sparring where the range is limited. And then with sequencing errors, you have chain completion drills. So you have to start with what you finish. And then on top of that, you also have to include setups and fully finish the combinations or sequences that you're starting. All right, so after you've determined what error and what prescriptive drills or exercises you need, then you need to define the success metric. If you can't measure it, it doesn't count. And every fix needs at least one observable metric. So examples of this would include, did I exit without getting hit? All right, or how many times did this happen? Did I get hit less at least? Did the opponent sprawl when I shot in for a takedown, or were they able to stop my takedowns less? Or was I able to create more desirable reactions with my feints and my setups? And then the next thing that you do is you retest this in live sparring in order to close the loop, right? And to see if the fix actually worked. Now, obviously, you need to apply a fix over a long period of time in order to determine whether it actually works, because that's just how skill development works. You're not just going to do something once and then instantly improve. So, this is where most people skip ahead. They'll just drill and then they'll go straight to sparring. So, the cycle is that you drill, you do a constrained spar, you do a full spar while filming, and then you determine where your flaws are, all right, determine what your flaws are, and then you adjust the drills or exercises based on this and repeat, right? So if the failure disappears, then you can move on. But do make sure to consistently be going back to these things because they will always matter. However, if it persists, then you either continue doing the drills and constrained sparring, or you adjust the drills and constrained sparring if you're still seeing this problem after a long period of time. You may be asking at this point, why are we tracking all of these metrics? So, metrics are not something that are going to replace skill learning. They simply tell you where to look for where your possible flaws are. So, film and experience are going to show you how you are losing the exchanges, but metrics just show how often these things are happening and whether or not these things are actively improving over time. So, without metrics, you're just relying on subjectivity, you're relying on feelings, all right? However, without film or feedback, you're also just guessing about what the issue might be. So, now back to the more realistic scenario. For this, anybody can apply this. And for this approach, what we're doing is after every round that you spar, you're asking one question, and that is, did what I tried actually work? Here are some more examples. Maybe you're trying to land a specific shot or a specific sequence, and you're asking, did it land? Or you're asking maybe for takedowns that you're wanting to land, or you're trying to work on landing more takedowns. Did I get the takedown that I set up, or did I even set it up properly? Did I exit clean or get hit? If you are not successful in these things, then one thing that you could do is simply just to write things down. All right, you write things down and then you search them up. So the next thing that you can do, all right, after you've determined where your flaws are and determine possible ways to fix this, is that you focus only on one skill per round. So for every round that you spar, you can, for example, only jab and angle out, and you're trying to land this as much as possible. Or you're only trying to counter after slips, or you're only trying to wrestle off the cage. So you're trying to do one thing as much as possible and then determine whether or not you're successful in doing this or not. And if not, then you can just go back to doing more research. So note that you're unsuccessful, all right? And maybe try and determine why you're unsuccessful in this. And then go back to Google or maybe ask your coaches as well and try to fix this. If you want more feedback, then you can even ask your partner some questions on how to improve. So, some examples of this would be asking if your jab was hard to read, or asking if your feints made them hesitate. And you can even do drills with constraints, all right? Or you can do normal drills depending on what you would view as an optimal method of skill acquisition. So instead of 5 rounds of just sparring, then you can do rounds where you only strike after you feint, or you lose the round if you get countered clean, or your partner starts with underhooks for every round. And the most important thing is you have to stop asking if you're working hard, and you have to start asking if the things that you are doing are working and what is actually failing. More technical questions. My sixth point of advice would be increase attention when learning. This is counterintuitive, but skill learning doesn't need so many reps. It needs more attention and immediate correction, right? So volume matters a lot, yes. You need to be repeating the same things over and over again, but it matters after the quality of what you're doing, right? So quality over volume. Now, the thing is, while tracking metrics will help you, and while recording and doing film study will help you, you don't actually need these things to improve. So, if you're going to take away anything from this, it is that most fighters are not really failing because they're lazy or they're unmotivated or they're undisciplined. It is because their training doesn't actually tell them when they're wrong or what they need to improve or what they actually need to fix. Right? You can drill thousands and thousands of reps for many years and still not improve because these reps don't actually tell you what you need to fix. There are no feedback loops. It is feedback loops that matter the most. Okay. Skills are built by adjustment. All right, skills are not built by volume alone. So the faster you have a feedback loop and the better your feedback loops are, the faster your skill improves. Thanks for watching.